What's going on, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls? Welcome to Friday Night Live. It is I, Christopher Rausch, your No Excuses coach, here coming to you every Friday with my best buddy, Scott Goyette. That was Eddie Van Halen, in case you live on our fucking rock. And unfortunately, this week, we lost Eddie. We lost Eddie Van Halen, a true American icon in the guitar world. Really set the standard and took over for what Jimmy Page and Jimi Hendrix were doing and just took it to the next level. I've been a big Van Halen fan since I was a little kid. Actually, right outside my studio here, I have the very first vinyl Van Halen record that I had when I was a little kid. It was like, I got that and Kiss and AC/DC. And so it's framed on the outside of my wall. I've always had it there. So we remember Eddie, and also we have to use Eddie's life as a remembrance to all of us that no matter how much money, how much fame, or anything else that we have, you can't buy back time. You can't buy back your health. So please, ladies and gentlemen, take care of yourself and rest in peace, Eddie. And with that, I bring my beautiful co-host up here, Mr. Scott Goyette. What's going on, Scott?
What's up, brother? How are you?
Rocking and rolling, man. Just feeling a little heaviness that our idols are, just dropping. It's crazy. I was just thinking about it, like Tom Petty, and it's blowing my mind. It's just absolutely blowing my mind that we're kind of getting up to that age where we're seeing more of our friends passing. We're seeing more of our friends' parents passing. We're seeing, our icons passing. And, but it just fuels me to live in the moment and just to be alive. But what about you, man? How are you doing?
Let's do some quick Van Halen trivia. We're going to throw this out, and in the comments, people can throw in the answers. Van Halen actually had two names before they were Van Halen. And both of those were backyard names when it was David Lee Roth. One of the names stuck for a little bit, and one they realized about 2 days later somebody already had that name. Does anybody know the two initial Van Halen names?
Holy crap. I used to know one of them, and
let's see, we got it. Hey, guess.
Cannot remember, but I know I've read it.
So Mammoth was the name. Yeah, they're Mammoth. And then the other one they came up with, and then they realized there's already a band with the name was Genesis. They're like, there's a Genesis? Yeah, it's true.
Van Halen would have been called Genesis?
They tried. I don't think Phil Collins wanted that. Peter Gabriel, they said, no, we're not going to play that game. So they went to Van Halen and took Eddie and Alex. And I'm with you, dude. I have so much Van Halen trivia. I was a huge fan. Anybody who could wail the guitar when we were kids was amazing. And he was special. He knew how to do it a different way, and he created his own style, and it was incredible.
Yeah. It's just the thing that really hit me the most is just thinking about how much they didn't produce. I heard a study that I can't remember exactly right now. I'm actually off on my trivia, but they had 9 albums, including the last one. So it was only 9. I mean, out of their career that started like in 1976, 75 in the backyards. It's just so crazy what they could have produced and what they could have done. And I just read today that Michael Anthony was going to rejoin the band for a 2019 tour.
Really?
So the original lineup, and Eddie was excited about it. And then Eddie's cancer took a turn for the worse, and unfortunately it never materialized. So it's just devastating, but I don't know. It's just a reminder about life. You got to live in the moments, and the rock and roll lives on, the soul lives on, right?
100, dude. And the thing, we were talking about in our coaching is, we were writing our eulogies. One of the things that we've done that we've spoken to you guys about is writing a eulogy. And one of the things I've been pressing a lot is write your eulogy with verbs, write your eulogy with things that live on indefinitely. And I mean, he played, he lived, he sang, he created. That's never going to die. So even though the passing of him physically, has come, what he leaves here is beautiful. And I think it should be a lesson for us all to put things out that we can leave, that the physical being doesn't need to stay, because, you and I, we're teachers, we're listeners, we're connectors, those are the things that are going to live on forever. And I think we need to put more effort into that. So that can be what he leaves in his legacy. When we listen to his music, we're motivated, inspired. So it's good stuff.
Yep. I've been listening to a ton of Van Halen. It's interesting, Scott. And that was very beautiful what you said. I mean, it's so true, but it's interesting also that, when somebody dies, when an artist dies, I think they said that Van Halen downloads went up like 600% or 6,000%. It was like crazy. It was like all of a sudden people are just kind of realizing, and I kind of did this with Chris Cornell too. I wasn't a huge Chris Cornell fan. I respected the crap out of him,
sure.
But his one album, I always draw a fucking blank on it. It's an acoustic album. I don't know. Just go look at it. It's an amazing, just acoustic album of covers and his originals, and it was just beautiful. And when he committed suicide, I was for days. I was just like, what? How I gotta understand this. I gotta figure this out. But I digress a little bit. Sorry about that, but I just wanted to memorialize Eddie Van Halen on this particular show tonight. And we have a great guest for you tonight. Would you like to introduce our guest tonight, Mr. Goyette?
Absolutely. So I always meet people in the strangest places, and they're always the right places. And this gentleman I met in the beautiful land of Bali, Indonesia. We were at a retreat together, and he got to listen to one of my meditations, and I think he fell asleep. That's okay. I did my best. But he's an educator. He's an amazing human being. He practices what he preaches. He's somebody who, stumbled at some points in his life, and he found ways to step back up, both physically, mentally, spiritually. And he's somebody I wanted on this show to talk about education, because he sees it outside the box. He's looking at it in a new way, the way you and I do. So please welcome my good friend, Paul Mend.
Welcome to Friday Night Live, Paul Mend.
Oh, are you done talking, Scott?
Yeah. Oh, that hurt.
Poor Scott.
I feel like you fell asleep at that same yoga meditation. I think we were both snoring on the floor at some point.
Yeah. It was nothing to do with either of us. It was to do with a 15-hour plane ride is what it really was. Nobody was going to keep us awake. Eddie Van Halen, I would have fallen asleep in a guitar solo eruption at that point.
Oh.
It would have soothed me.
Oh.
So what's going on, Paul? How's your Friday night going so far?
Friday night it's always awesome. Every night's awesome. It's
welcome to the show. We got Kick-Ass Unstoppable here, so cheers.
Cheers.
What do you got, Scott? Mouthwash?
So I have 2/3 water and 1/3 me and the bees. It's a special honey mixed with lemonade. So I'm being boring tonight, but it's delicious.
What's funny is you were drinking when I wasn't drinking. Now I'm drinking, and now you're drinking something for a colostomy.
I'm just trying to get super healthy. I'm tired of being anything less than everything I can be. So I'm going to go all in. I'm usually mostly in. Now I'm all in.
You're all in. Look at this. Look at this. Look at this. All the people here tonight. Let's just acknowledge the people here.
Beautiful group.
Pamela, what's up, rock stars? How are you doing? We got Glenda in the house from Georgia. Glenda's awesome. She's one of our kick-ass misfits for life. We got kick-ass Larry here. We got what's up?
Kim's actually here. Check that out.
Yeah. I asked her to come. I'm like, will you be my date tonight? And she said yes.
How sweet of you.
Yeah, I don't know. I know you have a date with her later. Pamela says, Jump is still one of my favorite songs. Yeah, I was not a very big fan of that song, but it's actually
1984 was not my favorite album by theirs. After Van Halen 1 and 2, fair warning, I was disappointed. I don't know. I'm a purist.
Yeah. Thank you, Larry. I appreciate that. What's up, Darlene? Very good to see you. Very good to see you.
My mom's here, Chris.
Yeah,
better introduce her real quick.
Hello, Mom. Mrs. Goyette. Or no, that's stupid. No, your wife is Mrs. Goyette. See, sometimes I put my foot in my mouth.
Well, she was a Goyette.
Yeah.
But then my mom remarried, so she is now Susan Himmel. So you were right. You're on track.
Okay. Well, I was just like
she would have been Susan Goyette, but she's not. But you were saying it right. You were thinking right.
I know. When I said it, I was like, it sounds like your wife. But getting a shout out for Pamela Aubrey. Pamela is awesome. Hi, Paul. Go, Scott. Whoa, look at here. We got our beautiful, wonderful Patricia Geigich. Hello.
You're nailing it now. You're saying it right.
What was that?
You're saying it perfect now.
Well, I practice
science
700 times a day. 700 times a day for the last 28 days. I've practiced it. My wife's like, "What are you saying? You sound like you're in pain." I love you, Patricia. I'm just fucking with you. I'm in a weird mood. It worked well on my walk and talk this morning. People are like, you have a crazy energy about you. I'm like, yeah, I'm just kind of fucking tired of being a little frustrated at shit. So I'm just being wacky like I used to be. I used to be like this all the time. It was kind of annoying. Wait, the guy who was always talking about jumping doesn't like the song Jump. Oh yeah, because I'm talking about Steve Harvey. It's two different things. It doesn't have piano, or not even piano. What is that stuff? It's like
keyboard.
Louisa, congratulations on Louisa is one of our great followers here and our friends. She just recently got married, so congratulations. You could be miserable like the rest of us. That's what I say. My wife doesn't watch the show. So anyways, we're here to talk about education. We thank you guys all for being here. We look forward to your comments and your engagement. So the question I have for you to kick off the topic tonight about education is, who was the most influential teacher in your life and why? And it could be anything from the time up until when you were a little kid to right now. Who's been the greatest teacher in your life and why?
Paul, why don't you kick off?
I will. I'm going to throw out, besides family members who, my dad and my stepfather, I think were very influential, but from outside of my family, I would say there was a gentleman by the name of Walt Caesar. And Walt ran the Salvation Army camp in Malibu Canyon, just off of Las Virgenes Road on the way to Malibu Beach, between Malibu Canyon, Las Virgenes exit on the 101, and just on the backside of Tapia Park. So for those of you from Southern California, you may know the area. As you can see from behind me with the shirt in the background there, I now live in Canada, but I grew up in LA. And Walt was the camp. He was in charge. He was in charge of the camp. I started working there when I was 14, 15 years old, probably 1977. I want to say it was my first year at the camp, and I was one of the cleanup guys. I was a dish pit crew and doing dishes and everything. But Walt just had a way with all the young staff that worked at the camp, and we used to have staff games where the waitresses would play the dish pit guys, and Walt would be the quarterback for the girls team, and we could beat the girls, and the girls always won because Walt knew how to, he set the rules just so that he knew he could win every single time, and no matter how good we were and how it's like we just couldn't beat him. And I used him as a role model because everything he did was always fair, and he loved everybody. He was just that kind of guy that everybody who worked for Walt loved Walt. And when I became a teacher, as a phys ed teacher for the first half of my career, I wanted to be Walt. Like, I always tried to pick the team so they'd be even. We never had uneven teams in phys ed class. Nobody ever got picked last because I did the picking. And, it wasn't like, Susie was standing there at the end going, pick me, when the lineup happens, right? And it's like, that guy's last. And that just never happened. I let the team leaders pick, the first two or three. And then I'm like, okay, I'll pick the rest of the team. And I would divide it up evenly, or I'd give one team an advantage, but then I'd play for the other team or something like that. So, I took that from Walt because just the energy that he gave and what he did for the people that worked for him, and just the dynamic energy that everybody had. That was, I would say Walt would definitely be one of those people. And he wasn't even a school teacher, right? He was just he ran the camp.
Wow, that's beautiful, Paul. Thank you for sharing that. Really do. I mean, it's amazing that how did you, just coming across him in your life, what kind of different person would you be without him in your life?
Very well, different, right? Like I don't know if I would have had the same skill set for, becoming a phys ed teacher. Although, I was coaching when my little brothers went through Mason Park and Chatsworth when they were 8 and 9. I was doing their soccer and basketball teams when I was 15 years old. So I was always into coaching. I was a swim instructor, water safety instructor, lifeguard. So I was always in that world. And before I knew I was going to become a teacher, I kind of did a year's traveling away. And while I was traveling, trying to figure out my life, like I had an associate arts degree, but like, what am I going to do for my grown-up job? I just thought about, I looked back on my past working at summer camp, coaching, and I'm like, well, I might as well become a phys ed teacher, and I could wear short pants for the rest of my life. I'm in. Right. And so that was my mindset at the time. And so I'm like, okay, I'm going to be a teacher. And so when I came back from traveling from Europe, that's how I ended up in Canada. Professor of mine at North Idaho College said, you should go to Canada, SFU, because they have the best education program in North America. I'm like, sounds good to me. Sounds like still traveling. And so came up and just continued coaching, continued teaching, and just enjoyed working with young adults and helping, shape them and make them awesome people.
So that's a tribute to Walt.
Absolutely.
So let's just start off the show. Go be a Walt. What about you, Mr. Scott? Who is the most influential teacher in your life?
So I'm going to go right where Paul went, because, there's definitely a lot of people in my family who are teachers, and those lessons came early, and they're important lessons. A lot of the life lessons, things that, help you build your level of integrity. And then there's definitely a few people who gave me knowledge and helped me with some things as teachers. But interesting, the same way as Paul, the important thing we need to realize in life is we're always teachers. So Walt might not be organically a teacher, and neither is the person I'm going to mention, but they were the one who taught me the most valuable lesson. And his name was Mark Metropolis. And when I used to go play basketball, he would open up a local church a couple times a week, and we'd go play. And I remember one time it was almost 9 o'clock at night, and all the other kids had left, and I was the last one there, and he was going to drive me home. And I was taking a few shots, and I was shooting at the foul line, and I thought he was going to try to close the gym a few minutes early. And I was an angry little kid sometimes, so I was about to start swearing, saying, "Come on, man, you can't close the gym. I got like 5 more minutes." Like it was all about me. And instead of him saying, "Stop shooting," he goes, "Keep your elbow in." He goes, "Release up higher and get a little more underneath your shot." And I'm like, "What do you mean?" And he goes, "Because when you're playing basketball in college, you're not going to be able to shoot from out here. It's going to have to come way up here." And that word resonated so much with me, that word "when," because nobody is saying that to kids. They're saying, "Do this, do this, do this." But that "when," whoa, that was my visualization. That's where it all started. That's where I said, no one can beat me, because that's what I'm going to be here. I'm going to be here. And I could visualize, and it started with that one word. So you'll notice very intentionally, a lot of the things that I'll do is I'm using words wisely. When I see somebody who's struggling, you'll see me slow down. It might get boring for a minute. I'm choosing that word to lift that person up, to help them with their trajectory. Because one thing we don't all realize is we are all educators. And when we use our words, we are manifestors. We are wizards. You know, we're creating the future based on our words. So that would be my 2 seconds, is we need some malts and we need some Marcotropolises in the world. And I think those are the teachers that don't even know they're teachers. And they're the best teachers.
It's true. It's true. Patricia says, rewire, Scott, you are brilliant.
Well, thank you.
I would frame that. I would take a screenshot of that right now while I have it up. You should take a screenshot of that.
I'm going to do it. And actually, can I put in a note, right, and tell her she's brilliant right back at her? Because we certainly, in fact, on Monday, we're going to be sharing our brilliance together.
Smile, Paul.
Was Paul smiling for the quick screenshot?
No, he wasn't smiling. He was just like all disappointed Canadian. No, actually, he's not a disappointed Canadian. He's well, I shouldn't even go there. Nope.
He's a Californian.
It's an amazing thing when people sow seeds and believe that something great will come of it, even if it's years down the road. Absolutely, Pam. Where was I just talking about? I was just talking about, when's the best time to plant an oak tree, either 25 years ago or today. I mean, yeah, it's so true. And so my greatest teacher, I've been talking about him a lot, and you guys heard me talk about Bill White, my mentor. But honestly, I'm going to take a completely different approach for the viewers watching. And thank you guys so much for being here. Please engage with us. We really want that. I'm going to go with the complete opposite. I'm going to say the greatest teacher. And really, when you think about it, dollar for dollar, my mom was the greatest teacher in my life. We were like oil and water, oil and gas, whatever wrong combination you want to make it, we were that. I mean, it was just such a crazy relationship that we had. But through those tumultuous times, those really trying times of physical and mental abuse, spiritual abuse, having to deal with all this stuff and having to try to help her at the same time, and being a young person, originally I had a lot of resentment for her. I had a lot of anger towards her. And, realistically, as I look back now, especially being a parent, I can look back on the past, 50 years of my life and go, wow, what kind of person would I have been if I had not experienced that, had not obviously chose to not be like that. But I use that as a gauge to say, wow, you've been miserable all your life. These people all seem to be happy. What are the happy people doing? Success leaves clues. What are the happy people doing? I don't want to be this. I don't want to be this. And I think I have a choice about doing that. So I'm just going to go ahead and be this. But she taught me also a lot of great things. She taught me about tenacity. She taught me about being who you are and owning who you are. She taught me about standing up for what's right and what's fair. I mean, she was with Cesar Chavez back in, I guess, the 60s or 70s, and, fighting for farmers' rights. I remember being a little kid and holding that red pin with this little black, I don't know, I can't remember, it was like an eagle or something like that, and going to these rallies. And my mom was like all over the place. And so she taught me to go stand up. She taught me to be, not let people put you down in some respects. She would put me down. But she taught me so many things, and she taught me so many ways not to be that, it also suffered in my sister's life. I have a half sister, and my sister never got the benefit of seeing how my mom really was. She only used it as a victim status. And that served her for the rest of her life, up until the point I stopped talking to her, because she was like, I'm going to be a victim. So I chose to take my mom's situation and become the better person that I could possibly be. And now being a parent, I know she's looking down. I know she's with me, seeing like, wow, Chris, because she told me all my life, but don't have a kid. We've had abuse in my family. I was abused. You were abused. You'll abuse. And I'm like, no, that's a choice. No, that's a choice. That's a choice. I can prepare myself before I have a kid to make sure I don't have those issues, to make sure I'm taking this on logically and humanly. And, God is my witness. It's been amazing. And it's, it's just all happens for you. So when you take those teachers in your life, that's what you guys need to do. Who are your greatest teachers that you're going to be doing? But tonight we're talking about the educational system. And Paul, you have quite a bit of experience with the educational system. Talk to us a little bit about how we can go about, invoking change in the educational system. I don't even know how it's even governed anymore. Can you share that with us?
Well, a little bit, from a Canadian point of view, because I did teach in Canada, but I did go to school in the States. So I did my high school, elementary school, all in California, Las Vegas district, LA school district, went to Warner Avenue and just outside of Westwood. And, things have changed, right? Things have changed greatly, as we all know. And I want to go back to something you mentioned about choice. And, it's our greatest superpower is the power to choose, right? We all have the power to choose. And so with that said, we get to choose whatever it is that we want to vision and whatever we want to become, and ultimately guide ourselves in that direction, because it is ultimately our choice. And so that was a really powerful statement. But with going back to the education system, it's become challenging. It's one of those things where, my last year of teaching, we had more suicides in the high school that I was teaching at than the 28 years combined prior to that, in that era. So kids are struggling right now. And this is pre-COVID. This is, 3 years ago. So I've been out for 3 years, but working with education online, doing some stuff with a company called Growth U. We've got a young leaders program coming out, launches globally October 12th. So super excited about that. But to go back, there's so many variables that are happening right now. So I taught psychology for my last 15 years of my career. It was the most popular elective in the school. It was a fun class because, there were three types of kids that took it. There were the kids that took it because they wanted to go to university and do psychology, so they wanted to have a head start. There were kids that took it because it was a relatively easy class and interesting, so it's an easy mark. And then there were those kids that were trying to figure out what the heck was going on with them, because there's, some stuff happening. Right. And so they're like, well, I'm going to go self-diagnose myself in Mr. Men's class. And so, those were kind of the types of students that I would get in my class. And it was a wide variety. We had, the spectrum went from low end to high end, high achieving, to kids that were on the autism spectrum, kids that were living in a motel because they were on their own by grade 11 or grade 12. They basically showed up at school. I had kids coming into class that, hadn't had breakfast. The only food was a protein bar. I'd slip them or something like that. So, it's a different era. And I've taught elementary school as well back in the day. And my daughter is an elementary school teacher in Vancouver now. And, we know that it's a challenge, right? Kids are coming from all walks of life. And so it's really easy to go with a cookie cutter. Well, this is the formula we should do. This will work because, it's going to work for everybody. Well, what we know is, it doesn't. Everybody needs a little bit something. So one of the things that I did as a teacher is I used to offer a Pro-D called lifeguarding in the classroom. As a past lifeguard at the beach, we know that, as I'm scanning, if a drowning occurs, I didn't do my job. Like, I need to be on top of it. So when I see somebody getting into trouble, I'm going to get them out of trouble before the actual incident occurs. Same in the classroom. What I would do is I would scan my kids when they came into the classroom in the morning. I just look at their face and check the emotional stability of, where their body posture was, what their face looked like. And luckily I had a pretty good read. So one day this young woman came in who, a student, like just on top of things, always smiling. And she came into class and it was like, ooh, spidey senses went off. And I immediately got out of my chair and I walked over. She had sat down and she kind of had this look on her face. And I'm like, hey, what's going on? She goes, my grandma died last night. And I'm like, why are you here? I thought I should come to school. And I'm like, you need to go home. I said, I will talk to your counselor. I said, go home. You're done. I said, I'll talk to you rest of your teachers, but you don't need to be here right now. I said, you're an A student. Like, you're not going to miss anything today. We'll get you caught up when you get back, but go. And then the other kids were, when kids would come in and they'd drop their head down on their desk with their hoodie up over, I'm like, what's going on? And whether it was a fight with the parents before they came or the girlfriend or whatever, right? Like just being able to get a read, because if you can refocus and just sort of get them out of their limbic system and get them into their prefrontal cortex, then we can teach them. But if they're in their limbic system and their hindbrain, reptilian brain, you ain't teaching them anything that day. So, the key was to get students upshifted so that they were ready to learn. So what does that mean at the elementary levels? Well, it means the kids have to have food for breakfast. Like they can't come in on an empty stomach to learn, because if they're hungry, last thing they're going to do is listen to you while you're talking. Second thing is we need to make sure that kids are exercising. We need to have quality daily physical education at the elementary level. So many kids right now are just, on their devices. I mean, I've seen moms with babies in carriages with an iPad at 10 months old. Mom's on her phone, texting her friends, pushing the stroller, and not even interacting with their child. And it's like, there's this attachment thing that happens between 0 and 3 years of age. And when lack of attachment happens, the brain develops differently. And so we really need to make sure that attachment's happening. I'll go into Piaget because I taught psychology. We've got sensory motor, pre-operational, concrete operations formula.
Pump the brakes. You've got a lot of passion, dude. You got a lot of passion, a lot of information. So I'm drinking through a fire hose right now. I'm like, okay. Let me try to digest all this. Great passion, great energy. Appreciate that. When actually Patricia just asked a really great question. She says, Paul, what 3 things do you suggest people do to live better? Thank you, Patricia.
Great question. All right. So 4 pillars of mental health. That's more than 3, but if I give you 4, better sleep. Sleep is probably the most important thing for mental health and physical health and your immune system. Number 1, so sleep well. The other 3, in no particular order: exercise or movement. Some people don't like the word exercise. Movement, move your body. Nutrition, eat healthy. And the 4th one is self-love. And if you can use those 4 pillars in your life, life will be good. If any of those pillars are missing, you're going to struggle. And that's what I said to when my students left my class, they could repeat the 4 pillars. That was, done all the time. Like Paul says, mom. Yeah, well, mom, I speak Canadian. I'm bilingual now. I speak Canadian and I can speak American. I can do Fahrenheit and centigrade, talented.
Multitasking.
Exactly.
Scott, out of what he shared with us, what connected with you the most?
So I love all those points. The 4 pillars are crucial because that gives us tools right away. Like everything else that you're saying, even to Chris's point, sometimes we get overloaded. And one of the things we're always trying to bring back here is come back to simple. And so I think it's really important to give simple tools like that. I mean, what do we put in our body? Our fuel, it's so important. The whole idea of movement, versus exercise, whatever we want to call it, that self-love component. I mean, this show's all about it. The other thing I want to add, and I want to talk to you about this because I think it's really important. What'd you write?
Canusa.
So one thing I want to add is one of the most difficult things that I'm seeing, and now that we have virtual, it's even more the case. There's an othering that is, it occurs on, level in our country where there's this group versus this group, but the othering has become more and more that it's the teacher and the student. And now that the teacher's not even part of the classroom, really, like there's this physical distance, it's happening more and more. And when that othering occurs, the kids live in their own silos and they're not interacting, they're not connecting. One of the things that I started to do with Go Love Now, and I want to talk to you about, Paul, is creating champions groups. Because realistically, when I'm in a classroom environment, I can stimulate the class and I can create a really safe environment quickly where the kids start teaching each other and I'm just part of the directive. If we get some champions in the school, that kid who's historically the bad kid, that kid's going to either stand up for what we want to call good or bad. So if we empower them with pillars, with things that they can share with others, we literally can make our job easier. In Austin schools, it's a 300-to-1 counselor to student ratio. Student to counselor ratio. So what if every kid has a problem on the same day? We're pretty much screwed. Somebody's going to take their life or whatever. So we need champions more than ever. What can we do as the adults who are in the teaching world, because this is a struggle right now, what can we do, or what programs or what ideas or what simple tools can we give those kids to become champions so that when we're not there, they're the eyes and ears? Because that, to me, is the biggest piece that we're missing and we failed our own students with historically.
So this is beautiful. And the vulnerability piece, when, we have kids in our classroom and they can be vulnerable, they learn so much from each other. And when they're not in the classroom, I agree. And I think there's so many variables for the suicide and the anxiety. And I know somebody asked a question, Patricia said, how do you reduce anxiety? So we'll go there in a second, but this Young Leaders program that we've developed, which is based on 7 psychological principles, is teaching kids that they're in control, they get to choose, they get to respond versus react. And these are all skills that they don't know, because what's happening right now is their life is led by delayed gratification, or instant gratification, I should say. They don't have delayed gratification, instant gratification. And they're influenced outwardly for their emotions. So their happiness comes from without. So if their selfie doesn't get enough likes by, a certain time at night, they're waking up at 2 a.m. going, I only still have 15 likes on my photo. I must suck. Right. And so it's not this internal of, I'm awesome, I love myself. It really doesn't matter what anybody else thinks at this point in time in life. But being in that age group of adolescence, right? This is like that time change when the prefrontal cortex is undergoing this restructuring phase. They're creating their identity, right? We talk about Erik Erikson and, the other researchers out there who talk about identity, right? We develop an identity as we become an adolescent. That identity shifts as we grow through mentors, people that we come in contact with, as we were all talking about our, special people in our lives that help shape us to who we became, people that we meet along the way, teammates, coaches, all of these things have an impact on us. What kids are dealing with right now is a lot of external information for their self-happiness. And so it's externally driven, and this program is designed to make it internally driven, that they get to be in control. And when somebody pushes our buttons and we react, they're in control. And ultimately, we have to take the jacket with the buttons off and turn the question back to them and say, well, that's really interesting. You just said that. Why did you say that? And be able to respond versus reacting. So taking those emotions and going, oh, wow, why am I feeling this way? Well, that's interesting. And turn the questions back so that you're now in control. So these are things that really kids need to hear, right? Kids, because they don't know what they don't know. And so by giving them basic skill sets to do this, I think it'll change a lot of lives for, the age 13 to 21 category that are really struggling right now.
Awesome. Oh, thank you. Patricia also asks, Paul, how do you alleviate the judgment they receive? Great question.
Great question. Ultimately, it's one of those things where it's a struggle, because in your peer group, in your clique in school, if we go back to the Breakfast Club, like things haven't really changed within the system. The school system was created in the early 1900s to, create workers for the industrial, complex. We still have that same kind of system. And so, Sir Ken Robinson, who just passed away recently, he was a professor in the UK and was a great educational sort of mastermind of creating new ideas and saying, why do we put kids through on their birthday? It's like we have this batch of children. So you're the same age, but some kid may be way more advanced than another in the same age group and should be in another grade ahead or 2 grades ahead based on their cognitive development. But we put them all through because of the stamp on their birthday. So there are definitely some things that need to change. To answer that question, how do you create it so that they don't feel that energy coming in from without? It's a challenging one, because everybody has this perception or feelings or emotions, but teaching them that this emotion that you get to control, whatever somebody is saying, that's their opinion, that's their story, that's not your story. And so really teaching kids that that's your story that you get to create, it's a challenge, because there's a lot of stuff that they watch, they see. It's all habits and patterns. And this cybernetic organism has been creating patterns and habits since infancy, right? Even possibly in the womb. And so we come out, and some of those patterns and habits serve us really well for what we want and our goals in life, and some really work against us. So it's really taking a step back and going, where's this coming from? Is this because I'm hungry, thirsty, or tired? Like, is it a physiological need that I'm really pissed off and grumpy and freaking want to rip somebody's head off right now? Or is it because somebody said something to me that pissed me off because this is like my ex-girlfriend or my childhood with my mom or my stepmom or my stepdad yelling at me? Or where's this coming from, right? So learning to look in and just to pick apart why you're feeling certain ways, and to understand that, okay, you know what? I'm going to sit and I'm going to meditate. I'm going to close my eyes. I'm going to ground myself. I'm going to be in control of this thing up here, because this ultimately, you get to choose your thoughts, right? And I think teaching kids that they get to choose their thoughts, that's like a, right?
They don't get to do it at home. I mean, that's some of my experiences I've seen, is the fact they don't get to choose their thoughts at home, so they don't get to think they get to choose their thoughts at school either, right? What do you think about that, Scott?
Yeah, I think you're right on. And I think even the concept of choosing your thoughts sounds so strange, because they're like, well, those thoughts are in my head. That's what they are. Like, I think a better way to look at it is all the things that are in your brain are free flowing, and you have the ability. It's almost like a cotton candy machine. You can reach in and pull a piece out, and now it's yours, but it's not yours until you take hold of it. And so I think a lot of kids have that tendency to think anything in their head and all their thoughts, all of that's going on is something they came up with, and that's what it is. One more thing I want to think about too is, I just totally drew a blank. I just did it again, Chris. Our brains have been doing this a lot lately, Paul.
Yeah.
Oh, I know what it was.
Oh.
So when we're talking about the leaders, the student leader, okay, one of the things I also think is super important is, what if, this is where I see a big issue, is when we go into schools and we're trying to work with adults and we're trying to serve kids, it's almost impossible to serve a kid and teach them all these things when they don't have somebody to bounce this stuff off of. Because most of the teachers in the schools, the counselors, a lot of people chose teaching because they wanted to go in and be in service to everybody else, and they're dealing with their own stuff. So their trauma has never been healed. They've never actually done the work. So we're in this cyclical pattern of, how do we do this? What do you think are some of the things that we could teach teachers before they become teachers? My first and foremost one, and I said it earlier and I'll start, is creating a safe environment. And not only a safe environment, but one where you've got the skill sets to, what you were saying is, sense what's going on, react, create that environment, and do it quickly. Because kids, especially the smartest kids, on day one, they judge you. Once they don't like you, you're done. So you create that environment early on, and that's your skill set. I think a lot of teachers could literally suck and still be amazing teachers if they know how to do that. What else can we add after that?
So let me just jump in there, because you're so bang on there. And, I mean, teachers have lives outside of school, believe it or not. They don't sleep at the school. They actually have families. They have children of their own. They have their own issues. And so, there's days that teachers will go in and, so this is a question that I would ask my students. I said, don't put a name down, but rank your favorite teacher and why. And most of the time it wasn't the knowledge of the subject that was number one for why they liked that teacher. The number one thing was, well, there was usually a tie. So one, they were fun or they were funny. There was humor in the classroom. Number two was they were fair. And so, those two things right there, fair and humor, doesn't matter the knowledge base. And I always said this, like, I could teach underwater basket weaving and know nothing about it, but I'd be a good teacher at that just because of the way that I interact. It's the interaction and the hey, buddy, what's going on? It's the relationship you build in the classroom with your students and the trust. And, I always said, I have one rule in my class. So, I didn't have a list of rules that the kids had to learn. The only rule was respect. Respect yourself, respect your classmates, respect the actual physical classroom itself. And I would always say, I'll earn your respect. I don't, I'm not expecting you to respect me until I earn it. And, within a week or, maybe even shorter, the kids got it. And the kids coming into my class already knew me because their older brothers and older sisters had already taken my class. And they're like, you have to take Mr. Men's psychology class. So, once you create that environment in your classroom, kids had expectations. There were other teachers in the school who, I said, So that's interesting behavior. If you were in so-and-so's class, would you have just said what you just said, or would you have behaved that way? And they're like, oh no, I would have gotten in so much trouble. And I said, well, that's interesting that you feel comfortable enough to be able to do that here. But again, maybe you're disrespecting your fellow students right now. So think about that for a second, right? And it's all just teaching, right? It's all teachable moments. And again, each teacher has their own expectations when you walk into their classroom, and kids understand those expectations. But to your point, as a substitute teacher going in, and I've done a little bit of TOCing after leaving the school because I'm on the emergency list. So when they run out of subs, they phone me and I go in, and it's always fun to go into a middle school, and the kids will test you, right? As soon as you walk in, they're like, oh, new guy, fresh meat. Let's go. Let's see if we can, let's see if we can make them cry. And, I'm like, hey guys, this ain't my first rodeo. I've taught psychology. And I said, and then I'll create a story or find out who they're related to or who their parent is. I'm like, oh, so I taught your mom. Do you want me to, I can give her a call tonight if you want. And, we'll have a conversation. Oh, no, it's all good. And, it's just figuring out little tricks and little, tricks of the trade. But ultimately, it's relationship building in the classroom from a teacher's point of view. And so, if that teacher really has the love of the students, and you just show genuine love, and you care, and you go the extra distance, you go watch their sports game, or you go to their band concert, or you go to the drama show, they get it. They get that you care, right? And and that's it. I mean, I think when you become a teacher, it's more than just the 9 to 3 and whatever, you're out of there. It's like, it's a full-time 24-hour job, because when you leave the school, you're still a teacher in the community. So if I go out to a bar and I have a beer, if I'm liquored up and falling down drunk, and parents are going, this is the guy that teaches, so it's like, you have to live a level way above what, the normal John, Dick, and Harry, when they go out to a bar on Friday night and lift it up.
You literally can't be human. I mean, that's one of the tough things, is you literally can't be human. But that's one of the great things you bring up, is how do you deal with parents? Have parents changed over the years? Because I remember when I was a kid and thinking about how my parent went to school and treated the teachers and everything. Have you seen a change in how parents interact with the teachers? Because I've got a bunch of friends that are teachers, and they tell me, because I thought about becoming a teacher, dude, don't. The parents are psychotic. The parents are crazy. The parents want the teacher to do everything. What's your experience, especially in your experience up there in Canada? Was it different?
Huge change everywhere across the board. So, what we know from a parenting style, there's the traditional 4 parenting styles. There's the democratic the democratic authoritative, there's the authoritative, there's the laissez-faire, and there's the uninvolved parent. Those are the kind of the 4 traditional parenting styles. Now we can throw in the bulldozing parent, the helicopter parent, the, it's all about me parent. So it's definitely changed in the sense that parents really are, going to battle for their kids. And what we're finding is that even at university, it's like these, oh, why didn't my son get an A in your class? They can't get into the university that they want to go to. You have to bump their mark up. And some teachers will do that. And then, the kid gets into university, and now they're phoning the university prof saying, hey, you're not being fair. My son deserves a better. And it's like, what is going on here? Right. And so we've reached this level of society where it's just kind of crazy. And, parents have to have a way bigger picture and understand that it's okay for kids to fail. It's okay for kids to struggle, because that's where growth happens. It's like, it's the whole concept of everybody's a winner. Everybody gets a trophy. Everybody, you can't fail. We don't fail children anymore. Guess what? When you get out of high school, shit happens. You're going to be unsuccessful. You may fail. Things are going to, you're going to get fired because you didn't show up on time to work. All of these things that are real life skills. Kids have to learn this through life. And, and there is a point of also, it's like, hey, and so in my class, if a student failed the test, they could do a rewrite. And I had a deal where, okay, you got, 10 marks out of 100, you really bombed it, rewrite it. It's going to be the same test. I'll give it to you. Take it home, study it, come in and rewrite it. Now you got 100%. Well, you improved by 90 marks. Well, guess what? I'm going to divide that in half. I'm going to take 45, add it to the 10 you got the first time. So now you got 55 out of 100. So you still passed the test. You did a much better job, even though you got 100, the subject. But again, it's teaching that student. It's like, maybe you should have studied the first time around, because there is a consequence for not achieving, right? Whereas there's different styles and different theories on doing that, because ultimately, My job was to teach the student X, Y, Z, come out with knowledge, being able to speak the language, being able to go to university, and being able to pass their Psych 100 class, easy peasy. So it was beneficial for kids to learn it. And so if a student failed, I didn't want them to fail. I want them to learn the topic, but also I want them to also understand, unless there's a legitimate, like, I was sick, I had mono, like, or I was at a hockey tournament, you know, if they're extenuating circumstances, I'll take that into account and do a rewrite, and I'll maybe change the percentage. But ultimately, the goal is, let's have the student learn what it is they need to move on to the next stage of life and what's going to help them. So by having them fail, obviously they have to learn at some point that you got to show up to class. And I told kids, I said, if you fail this class, you worked really hard to fail, because this is a hard class to fail, right? And literally, I think in my 15 years of teaching, I had maybe 6 students that basically withdrew from school, so I couldn't fail them because they just weren't showing up to any classes, not besides mine. But I had teachers who would phone me and like, did Susie show up to your class today? I'm like, yeah, she's been here all week. I haven't seen her all week. I'm like, oh, that's, you know, you got to look at your teaching style at that point in time. Like, there's a reason why she's not showing up, whatever that might be, right? But if they have support in that classroom and they're going to be there and you're engaging, you're having fun, kids are going to learn. Like, kids are going to learn no matter what. If you have fun, they're going to learn better. That's my philosophy on teaching. Got to be enjoyable.
Scott, you're a teacher too, right? I mean,
Scott's an amazing teacher. I've heard stories of Scott's classes when we were in Bali. He's an amazing teacher. Legendary.
I would add this, Chris. I think Paul said it without saying. He said it and then he exemplified it a bunch of times. I think step 2 is we create that transparency, that accountability. That vulnerability early on. And then the next piece is everything is a teachable moment. I think that is clearly the thing all teachers need to understand. Yeah. And to the point of, I was listening to you and I'm thinking, you're saying I can't go out and drink. I have to watch my behavior. I would almost want to challenge that. I would almost want to say why. And because we're still falling into the confines of how we're supposed to behave because somebody else told us to. Here's my take on that. I'm going to be who I am. And if somehow I lose my teaching job because somebody else deems what I'm doing inappropriate, I know I do the go love now thing, but I almost want to say that you could go blank yourself, because here's my take. And this is my real take on life. I'm a human. Sometimes I want to go have a beer at a baseball game or a football game or whatever. I want to go do something. And if I said something that upset you or whatever, and now you're going to say I'm not a good teacher because of it, I'm going to have to question your complete fakeness, because we all do something that isn't perfect in a moment. We get through it, we work through it. So I would say that everything in our lives is a teachable moment. So that student who says something in class that's stupid because they felt comfortable, I would just say, let's talk through, like you were saying, why would you say that in my class and not in others? And I'm not shaming you or blaming you. Let's talk through that. And they say they felt comfortable. Well, why do you feel like you needed to say that? I would work through that and turn that into something perfect 100 times out of 100. And if that student saw me somewhere else saying, dude, I saw you at a bar and you were acting crazy, and this doesn't happen anymore because I'm boring and I'm old. But if that happened, I wouldn't be ashamed of that. I go, yeah, dude, I teach you guys all week. I'm exhausted. I needed a few beers. And they'd say, well, would you condone our behavior? I'd say, probably not. So maybe I should be doing that. And that's the point. There's a time we are all the student and the teacher simultaneously. The arrogance to think like I'm a teacher, therefore you're all students, is bullshit. The arrogance for me to think just because I'm older than you, I know more than you, I might have more information. You might have a better processor. You might be a better critical thinker. You might be 50 times what I am. And so at some point, I think the parents need to look to the teacher and say that there's an interconnection, that we can learn from one another. Me as the teacher look to the student. We learn from one another. We realize this is a giant matrix that we're all learning from one another, period. And stop blaming and shaming and telling people every single moment in this life is a learning opportunity, period. That's why.
So let me jump back in just for a second. It's one of my things every Friday at the end of class, like every last class I had on Friday before the weekend happened, I had a line every single Friday. I never missed a Friday. And I said, hey, have a great weekend and remember, be good to your captain. So my story was that, I said, not that any of my perfect angel students in my class would go out and drink and party and do psychoactive substances on the weekend, but their friends might. And so I always told them, I said, hey, if your captain's going to go off board, make sure you have somebody with you whose captain is on board so you get back safe. So my students would always ask me on Monday, Mr. Mann, was your captain on board this weekend? I said, always. And I said, if not, I'm at home and I'm, having a beverage at home and I don't drink and drive and I don't, so I think walking the walk as a psychology teacher, because I was teaching that aspect, that's why, when I go up to Apex Ski Mountain and, go to the gun barrel and have a beverage, students will come up to me and go, Man's your captain on board? I said, always. Because literally, I have kids that are, kids. I have 45-year-old students come up to me and go, man, how's your captain doing? I'm like, awesome. My captain's on board, buddy. I said, and literally they take that. That is one of those things that, you run into those students years and years later, and they bring back up things that you said to them, and some things you don't even remember. And you're just like, and they're like, that was the biggest impact of my life. And you're like, I don't even remember saying that to you, but that's awesome. Literally as a teacher, when you're saying things, it's like, you need to really think your words. As you mentioned earlier, it's, there's so much impact that you have on young brains that, you don't know what's going to stick. So you're always planting seeds and whatever that looks like. So ultimately, if I'm telling my students to do X, Y, and Z and keep your captain on board and be safe, I need to be that role model, right?
Yeah.
That was my feeling. So,
and that's why most motivational speakers, teachers,
and you just got one of the great.
What do you got?
I was gonna say, you just got one of the greatest compliments. I wish you could put yourself into 10 teachers. Awesome, Paul. That comes from our dear friend and mentor, Patricia. So that is super huge. And Mom says a perfect scenario is when a teacher and parents work together as a team. I couldn't agree more. Absolutely. Everything's a teachable moment. And she's talking about a Kiss song, Black Diamond. No, probably not. She's talking about this.
I thought you were talking about Apex Mountain, our ski runs that we have.
Right, talking about Whistler or something like that. So much wisdom. Then there's me. So if you, Paul, if you had a microphone right now to the entire world, you're speaking to all the educators, all the parents out there, and you've got 1 minute to really instill in them what you believe the future of the school system, the educational system, and how parents should be involved. What would you say to them? And if it takes a minute and a half, go for it.
Wow.
No pressure. There's 7 million people watching right now. Don't let the number fool you.
The only thing I can say is just the most important thing is keep the lines of communication open with your children, right? Like just play as a family, take trips as a family, travel as a family, be involved in their lives. Don't disassociate, and don't just say, oh, they'll be fine, let the teachers do it. Be involved, right? I mean, it's a responsibility. Having children is, you need a license to get a gun. You need a license to drive a car. You need a license to drive a boat, ride a motorcycle. You don't need a license to have kids. And so, ultimately, if you do choose to have kids, it's the most important job in the world is, bringing your child up to be healthy, be happy, and be a productive citizen, helping other people in society. And so don't leave that for the school to do. Don't do, it's just be a family, be communicative, like just interact, and you're going to be the best teacher for your children ultimately. But again, it's the tools in your toolbox. So if you don't have those tools in the toolbox, and I saw somebody had posted in, what if they have special needs? What if they're this? We've got everything under the sun. We've got kids with, all sorts of psychological disorders out there, mental illness, all sorts of things that are exploding exponentially right now. And ultimately it's a challenge. So it's, really finding people in your network, the village to raise a family concept, be that person to your children, but take that time with your kids and be there for them, and be there to support them when they fail. Be there not to bulldoze the way through to get them success, but just to say, hey, that was tough, wasn't it? That was a tough loss. And, but, how do you think you played, or whatever that looks like? And just say, what could you do different next time? Like teach it as a learning thing, and that it's okay that you lose, or it's okay that you failed. It's okay. Like brush yourself off, get up and do it again, and create some resiliency and some grit. And ultimately, kids that have the ability to have that resilience and to get to quote Chumbawamba, you get knocked down, but get up again. Like that's ultimately, if kids can do that, they're going to be successful in life. If they get knocked down and they stay down, it's going to be a long, tough road to hope.
Bam, bam. Paul, where can people get a hold of you, get in touch with you? Thank you so much for being on Friday Night Live with us and sharing your brilliance and your wisdom. I mean, obviously education is such a huge, important role in what we're doing and what we're shaping for tomorrow's youth. Where can people get a hold of you and continue the conversation?
Beautiful. You can get a hold of me either through social media. I'm on Instagram. I'm all about beach. On Facebook, it's just my name, although I've got to delete a few people because I'm kind of full right now. But Growth U, we have a free daily program that sends you like just a daily email of a positivism or something to focus on for that day. You can sign up there, and you can definitely get a hold of me at Growth U. So it's Growth-U. It's like Growth University, but just Growth-U. And check that out. And I'm the vice president of Growth U, so you can easily access me through there.
Thank you, Paul. What would you, if you had the same question, I'm going to put this up here. Joshua has joined us, and Joshua is a raving fan of our show. So thank you, Joshua. We appreciate it.
And he's a fan of the Toronto Maple Leafs. I'm sorry, dude. That's
yeah.
Team,
so,
but
so thank you, Joshua, for being here. But there's the website right there. I'm really interested to hear what you would have to say, Scott, because I mean, obviously an educator in the industry and a thought provoker and Go Love Now. What would you say if you had a microphone to the world right now and got to be able to talk about the education system and what you feel would be the best way to progress forward for our youth? No pressure.
So I would absolutely include that those champions in those schools are literally a byproduct of healthy families. So we can't put that reliance on the teacher. We can't put that reliance on the counselor or on a principal. So what we need to be doing at home is set realistic but high expectations within the family, and we all subscribe to those. So if we say don't stay out late or don't do this, and the dad comes home late or the mom comes home late, we all have the same rules, period. It's not, oh, I do what I want, you're the kid, so it's different rules. Live up to expectations, set rules that you're all going above and beyond to achieve. So create accountability, create resiliency, create just good behaviors that we've forgotten. I mean, we look up and we look at our leadership, it's horrific. And the reason being is because we're not subscribing to that in our own family. And so I would leave it at that.
I got one more thing. Can I throw one more thing in before you say goodbye?
No. Of course you can. You're still live. Go ahead.
Delayed gratification is probably one of the biggest things that you can teach your child. The word no, when it means no, that you don't go back and change it when they beg and whine and squeal and do everything else. Like if it's a legit, like a no, hard no, stick with it. Let them know that no means no. And man, what a difference. If you've ever seen the marshmallow experiment, and I know you guys are probably familiar with the marshmallow experiment from Stanford, but you know, they left a kid in a room. They're like, here's a marshmallow. If you wait till I come back, you get two. And some of the kids would eat it and some of the kids would wait and they'd have, you know, they get the second one. And then they did a longitudinal study where they followed those kids later on in life. And there's some discussion whether or not it was all, you know, up. Anyways, those kids that had delayed gratification were more successful later on in life than those kids that could not delay gratification. You can learn delayed gratification. It's not something that's unlearnable, but it's one thing that's really important, that you get to wait for things, because in today's society, everything is instant gratification, man. I can download a movie. I can download a song. I can, you know, when we were kids, and all three of us are similar age, if you missed the Peanuts, you know, Christmas special, you freaking had to wait another year till that Peanut special came back on, and you didn't get to see Charlie Brown. Like you went to school and you're like, I didn't see it yesterday, and everybody, oh, I saw it, it was really good. And it's like, and we didn't have VHSs, we didn't, you know, like, and that came out later, and then it's like at least you could record it. But back in the day, you had to wait. Right. And so it was just a part of life. Now, if the Wi-Fi goes out, kids are losing their mind. And it's like, oh, my God, the Wi-Fi's out. Ah! And they're, you know, and you take their iPad away when they're 7 years old and they're screaming and having a hissy fit. Well, that's called delayed gratification. It's like, OK, your time's up. Time to stop and, you know, move on. And it's OK. You can come back to it later. So. All right.
Bravo. 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 Hey, you guys rock. Thank you so much, Paul, Paul. I was like,
you saw Pam and then you said, Paul, I saw your ring.
I saw Pam. I was like, oh, what?
It's a P word.
Too many P's. I'm ADD. I'd be like, blah, blah, blah. Awesome show, guys. Thank you so much.
Josh.
Thank you for being here. Patricia, what a gift to hear Paul tonight. Thank you so much, brother, for being here and sharing. We had a talk before even the show. We were testing out our audio and our video earlier, and Paul and I had a great conversation. So look forward to many more of those. So I'm going to place you guys backstage here just for a second, and I'm going to finish out the show, and then we'll talk. So ladies and gentlemen, there you have it. 1 hour. Look at that. We actually kept to our time. You know, we try to keep these things condensed, but sometimes they get off the rails and we have a good time with it. But such an important conversation tonight, right? Education. I did a walk and talk on this morning, thinking about, okay, education as a total. Are you still educating yourself? We talk about the education system as a point of reference tonight for our kids, but what is your particular education system? What is your education system? How many books are you committing to read a month or listen to a month? How many podcasts are you listening to a month? How many seminars are you going to now virtually, right? Having coaches and having everything in your life is the immediate way to really realize what the results are that you want faster, right? Let me think about that. So let's think about that for a second. You know, when you have somebody in your life that's pressing you and you're in a state of accountability and you are focusing on your education versus focusing on all the news and the social media stuff, think about where your outcome is going to be, right? Think about where your outcome is going to be. I've talked to people at the beginning of COVID and now actually still now, and some people have become so amazingly stronger physically, mentally, spiritually, and some people have gotten way worse, and it's all about a choice. But when you think about the education system, the biggest thing you could do, especially if you're a parent, is to be, like Paul said, involved in your kid's life. You know, it blows my mind when somebody goes to school and starts shooting kids up and they interview the parents and the parents like, we had no idea that Johnny was this angry. It's like, really? Why don't you take a fucking interest in your kid's life? Why don't you go into his bedroom every once in a while and say, hey, what's going on? What's over there? What's going on? You know, are you sad? Are you happy? Or, you know, whatever. It's like, oh, he just spends all of his time in his bedroom playing video games. Oh, okay. You didn't realize he was making a bomb in there too? Come on. You know, as parents, we have to be responsible. I have a 3.5-year-old, and I am proud to say that I will be responsible in the school board meetings, in the city council meetings, anything that involves the schools, to make sure that the kids have the right direction and the right mentors and the right people that are in place to make sure that the future of this world is really successful, right? Who doesn't want that? I mean, when we opened the show talking about Eddie Van Halen, 65 years old. I mean, that's not much further from where I'm at right now, but we have to continue the legacy of what we want this world to become. We want to set the benchmark of what we want our kids and the younger generation to accomplish, and to prove that all the shit that we went through during this time wasn't for nothing, right? That we could grow out of this, that we could change things, that we could actually be responsible for our actions and take accountability for the things that we want to do in life and make the world a better place. Why not? Why are you being a part of the problem and not part of the solution? Be invested in your kids. Go talk to your teachers. Go learn yourself. Be a part of the total education system. And I promise you the world will be a better place. I love you guys. Thank you so much, Paul. Thank you so much, Scott, for being here. We love you guys. Glenda, Susan, Pamela, Patricia, Anna, Louisa, all you guys, Joshua especially. You guys can't see this on the screen if you're watching this on replay, but there's a bunch of people here that are commenting. So anyways, we love you guys. Always put it on your calendar. Just put it on your calendar. Friday nights, 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We always bring great guests. We always ask the tough questions, and we also have a good time. So we love you guys. Have a great weekend, and especially make great moments with each other. You never know when your time's up. So please, please just be in the moment, enjoy each other, and have a kick-ass weekend. We love you guys, and always stay unstoppable.